Feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Shrimp Tank. I'm your co-host, Ted Jenkin, here with my co-host, Lee Heisman. And of course, every week, we bring you some of the brightest and best CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs in and around in Atlanta and across the United States. We've had the good fortune in the last 8 years to interview more than 500 business owners here in Atlanta. Some people you know, like the Williamson brothers and Duffy Realty and so many other companies like Jim Ellis Chevrolet and so many other big businesses that are here in Atlanta. And of course, national experts like Tony Horton from P90X and even Brian Dawkins, Hall of Fame safety for the Philadelphia Eagles. What do we try to do every week right here on the Shrimp Tank? Lee and I like to talk to business owners about this idea of what it takes to start a business, what it takes to grow and scale a business. And maybe one day you too will exit stage left in your business and sell for a lot of money, if that's what you want. As always, you can catch all the podcasts at Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, or Spotify. You can always get all of the broadcast at shrimptankpodcast.com. And I highly recommend going to our YouTube channel and clicking that subscribe button so you can get all of the videos of all of our entrepreneurs. Lee and I do some bite-sized segments with them, which are real interesting, and that notifications bell so you can get them in your inbox every single week. Today, we're excited to bring on Rebecca Brizzi. She has our own consulting firm, consulting small businesses in so many different areas. So I think this is going to be an interesting topic to talk about today, because you've got background in obviously starting businesses and running businesses, and now you consult businesses as well. So thanks so much for coming on the program today.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
So let's just talk and start with this idea. Somebody comes to you and they say, you know, Rebecca, I got a great idea. I got a great idea. It's going to change the world, which is what most business owners think. And then the question is, how the heck do they start on the glide path of turning this into a business?
Yeah. You know, those first months, year and a half, I'm actually a very big fan of being scrappy, as I say, in that period. The idea is half the battle, but once you start working on it, it feels like it's actually a much smaller fraction of the battle, because the execution on an idea is a lot of work and it entails a lot of moving parts. But the first part is to take it to market. Honestly, I'm a big fan in selling something before you've built it. There's a very big difference between false promise and selling before you build, right? So selling something that you can realistically deliver on, maintaining promises, is essential to building a good business reputation. But the point is proving that there's a market and then serving that market. So that's the point of selling before building. And so you prove that there's a market, you bring something to market, and then you learn by doing.
Does this sort of dispel the whole myth about getting a big old business plan? Because I know Lee and I have been the kind of entrepreneurs as we built our businesses that we didn't build a big business plan. We actually did that. We went out, we started selling stuff, and we're like, fail, make mistakes, figure it out. Like, do you have a lens on that about the whole big business plan versus, just do it and fail and then try to figure it out?
I'm a fan of the business plan, actually. I love all of the old boring paperwork. I spend so much time building organizational charts, and I cannot tell you how exciting it can be to build an org chart. And I get people all the time saying, oh, the org chart is dead. All right, I saw that in the Wall Street Journal. All due respect to the Wall Street Journal, it's not. It's an incredibly functional part of a business. Same with the business plan. Having said that, bring it in 18 months into the whole thing. So absolutely, go to market, get the work done. The beauty of those first few months when you're just bringing the idea out is that you're beholden to nobody, right? Before you have clients, you're not beholden to clients. And before you have employees or many employees, even if it's just a few people, you can be scrappy like that. And you can get along in that way. And you can be improvisational so long as you're communicating with everybody. And so then you bring it out and you figure out what works. And then you make those micro changes. So as I say, there's some fundamentals. You do have to know what you're bringing to the market, what you're promising your audience and your clients. but then you can tweak it as you go. So then you're learning by doing. You learn what people respond to in terms of marketing messages and where your audience is. You learn what people respond to in terms of what's truly valuable in your product and how are they using it? What difference is it making to their lives? Because you might know that it's revolutionary, it's going to change the world, but you have to prove that through people using it, and the way they do will always surprise you. You're going to learn what's right in terms of your pricing model. Now, you can't like drastically change your prices every month, but you can make changes to your pricing model, for example, and how you price and these sorts of things. So there's so much that you can tweak behind the scenes that is not going to affect your clients directly, right? You're making the changes, but you still offer consistency. Now, all of a sudden, you've been in business for 18 months, you have some clients, you're confident about what you're doing, you've hired a couple employees, you're accountable to people. Now build your business plan. And at this point, your business plan, big whole, it can be big and it should be whole, but it can also be small and it can also be somewhat scrappy at that point. But the purpose at that point is to say, here's what we're doing, here's why we're doing it, here's how we're doing it.
Right.
And you can do that for yourself. So even if you're on your own, there's a lot to be said for taking ideas out of your head and putting them on paper. Anybody who's ever done that knows how difficult that is to do. It all makes sense in your brain, but it is very different translating that into words and full sentences.
Rebecca,
So the business plan has
I'm
that
sorry.
function.
Sorry.
Please.
No, it's words of wisdom, of course. And most business owners, first I say, I love that you said at 18 months, now we can start building a business plan, and someone has to make it to 18 months. Let's start there.
Sure.
But most
Yeah.
entrepreneurs, they're thinking so many steps ahead, right?
Mhm.
They're always thinking outside the box, right? And I've always grown my career, and Rebecca knows where I'm going with this, and you may know where I'm going with this, but most people think outside the box as an entrepreneur, big picture, but they're not thinking of the minutia that has to happen. And the reason I say that is because there's potentially here, it looks like a soon-to-be bestseller called Beating Ideas that Beat Thinking Outside the Box. Let's be clear, Ideas that Beat Thinking Outside the Box. Ted, Rebecca's book that's on Amazon, Phrases for Business Success, Ideas that Beat Thinking Outside the Box. So can you speak about that? Number one, what prompted you to write a book? And it kind of is in the same flavor and tone as what you just said.
I'm a big fan of being in the box. So the box, and this is in my book, I explain where the whole thinking outside the box comes from. Some of you may know it's the 9 dots puzzle. And so it's this mental model, it's this thinking puzzle, and it's about connecting 9 dots, never lifting your pencil from paper and doing it within 4 lines. And the point is when you fill in the puzzle that it's all in the box except for one small part of it. When you think about that in business, thinking outside the box exclusively means ignoring your business. Your business is happening in the box. And there's a lot of value to what's happening in the box because that's all of the context of what is actually occurring and what is actually successful. So I'm a very big fan of starting in the box. Start with the context of reality, right? Who are your clients? What do they respond to? What are your resources? What are your capabilities and skills that you have in-house? And then just stretch the box a little bit. So don't abandon the box, right? The box is where your business is. And so the challenge, I think, also of thinking outside the box exclusively is you risk ignoring reality, and you risk overstretching yourself. And there's so much value in the box. I mean, that is your business. That is the most valuable asset that you're working on. So that's my belief of using the box to your advantage. All the best innovation really comes from taking something that already exists, making it a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better. So that starts in the box and it just stretches it a little bit at a time. And that's how you grow.
Do you think that most business owners, when they think about the clients that they're bringing on, should they go through this process of creating like a client avatar? When you talk about this ideal client, how do you consult and coach people about thinking about the marketplace and their ideal client?
A lot of what I do with the business, I have a philosophy or an approach, if you will, that is back to the source. So going back to what is happening originally? What do people want originally? So when it's in your business, back to the source, right? We're back in the box. What is the purpose of everything we're doing here? When it comes to clients, the source is the client. So going back to the source in terms of what does the client want? And yes, they want to be wowed and, and it's fun to wow them, But ultimately, they just want something to be done. They want it to be done easily. They want it to make their life easier. If they're coming to you, if it's a B2B, it's because they have an obstacle in their business they need to overcome. If it's a consumer, it's because they need access to something that they don't have access to otherwise. So when it comes to that client avatar, understanding who your client is, I'm a big believer in, let's understand how your client behaves. So what is it that they want? That's the source. And that's not the technical side of whatever it is that you're selling. That is the outcome of whatever it is that you're selling, right? It's the transformation that will occur for that client. And then what is it that they need to obtain that transformation? Now we're back to your skill, the thing that you're offering. And so putting these things together to build that perfect client, again, you can have 5, say, realtors in a room, and they all have a different perfect client, as you well know. And so it's about understanding those behaviors, because ultimately when we're working, and especially in a B2B world, but not exclusively, we're working with clients. If most services are, and even products are not necessarily transactional. There are multiple interactions. So that service and understanding what those clients want in terms of how they are being delivered to, not just the object that they're purchasing, is just as important. So that's where a lot of that want comes in, is they want the transformation. But as I said, they also want it to be easy. Some people want more hand-holding. Some people want less. Some people want more automation. Some people want more human. And all of that goes into, how do I deliver it? And based on that, who is my perfect client?
Makes sense.
As businesses grow, obviously that scalability is important. And I'm sure that's a part of, the person not working, obviously, in the business, the person working on the business. And that takes one of the best parts about your business, but also one of the worst parts about your business, which can be your employees and how to keep employees happy, right? No, and Ted, I love that you laughed at that. It's true, right? It's the best part of all my businesses is my staff, the community, the success that you gain together. But also when you sometimes have some bad eggs in that group, it can potentially ruin the organization. So I've always put 50% of my effort into my staff in-house and 50% of my effort into our clientele for all the businesses that I've had. But part of your approach is talking about, and I love that you wrote that, which is true, happy employees. And I saw that term that you had written, happy employees, and that's such a giant grab bag, Rebecca, because most people in today's world, maybe they're not uber happy because they're looking at social media, they're comparing themselves, what else is in the marketplace. How do you handle happy employees? Such a wide open phrase.
In the same way that there is the perfect client for every business, there's also the right employee for every business. And part of the responsibility of the business owner when they go out to hire is to hire the person who is best suited to work in their business. And I mentioned org charts before. To me, that's part of the function of a great organizational chart, is it determines not just we need somebody to do sales, but gives a really good description of what that looks like in this business, not just the activities, but the type of person. And this goes back to the business mission statement, the business guiding principles. What are the behaviors that we expect in this business? What are the behaviors that our clients expect from this business? So you can build the type of person who will blossom here, who will work well here, and also the type of person from whom the business can learn. So to have happy employees, a big part of that is to create a working environment where there is a dialogue between the employer and the employee. And they are telling each other, this is what I need from you to be successful, and this is what I need from you to be successful. The employee wants to be successful in their job, and the employer, they want them to be successful because it makes their business successful. So that's a back and forth. For example, I much prefer stay interviews over performance reviews, because a stay interview actually includes everybody's interest, and it's not one directional. So happy employees, again, the exact conditions will change from business to business, and it's up to the business to acknowledge what those conditions are specifically for them. But let's look at what people want from their jobs. Of course, they want job security, and of course, they want a salary and benefits, and of course, they expect to see that increase over time. But we also know, and this is increasing continuously with every generation and really year on year, that people want professional development. The expectations of professional development are continuously increasing. People want to feel ownership. We know more and more, and we see more and more of people who want to feel that they own this, that they are bringing their skills, that they're not just a cog or a part of a machine, but that they're actually bringing something of value. And there's a lot that employers can do to offer that. And it's extremely beneficial to employers to have a team of people who are taking ownership of their work. So create the conditions where that can happen. So all of this goes into creating happy employees. And I admire that that's always been a focus of your business. That's extremely wise. I believe in 3 core pillars to a good business: happy employees, loyal customers, and business goals. The make and break one is happy employees, because if your employees do not like working there, that will spread to every other part of the business.
How have you been coaching businesses today now that we've sort of come out of the pandemic and there's this major tug of war between employees working at home or being in work, and obviously in general, a lot of people seem to be happier working at home than they are coming into the office every day. But at the same token, companies are trying to build culture and maximize the productivity of their employees. How are you coaching business owners to think about this paradigm shift, which may or may not be permanent, but it certainly feels like there is some permanency to it?
Yeah. It's a good example of back to the source again. So why do people want to work remotely? It's not just because they want to work remotely. There are all sorts of reasons. Perhaps they really dislike their commute. Perhaps they want more flexibility with their time. I mean, maybe it's that they want to be close to the kitchen because they like to snack all day. I mean, all of these are valid reasons. And it is a question of understanding that. What is it that people prefer about working from home than working in the office, and vice versa, because there are people who prefer to go into the office.
Yeah,
they feel their home is
that's
too
me.
distracting.
I don't want to be at home.
Right. So it's a question of understanding what is causing those conditions. Why is that the case? And then
But that's a personal problem, Rebecca, for Ted. When he said, she said she wanted to evaluate why is that the case and get into the mind of the employees. And when I heard Ted say it, I was just saying that's a personal problem. I don't know. If
I'm trying not to end up on forensic files. So that's why I come to work. That's it.
This is a good motivation in life, Ted. So keep it up. But I saw that, especially when everything initially went into lockdown, and I had a client who worked from home, and she ended up getting a remote working space because now all of a sudden her kids were home and her husband, who worked in an office, was home, and she didn't have the space. And so she was the only person going into this remote workspace for about 8 months of her life. It was fascinating. But so everybody has their reasons. Now, it doesn't mean that a business can accommodate the exact requests of every individual, but a lot can be done when that business or when those owners acknowledge the motivations behind those and then can adjust accordingly. There's also the fact that different people work in different ways. Some people work best with complete silence. Some people work best in sort of half-hour sprints, and then they need to get up and stretch. And as I say, all of these are valid. So there is a lot more flexibility, and it is a challenge perhaps for business owners to contend with that. But there's also the benefit of people being able to express their preferences, which all leads to more happy employees. So again, it's about that dialogue. Understand what people need and then find the way to give it to them.
So Rebecca, again, as you already know, and for our viewers that have watched this, or if you're just listening to this in audio, if you're just listening, Rebecca looks exactly like the way she sounds, professional, put together. And this is all positive, Rebecca. I'm just saying many times you might have people hitting our YouTube link, as Ted said, but we also have a lot of streamers that'll grab this on a car ride instead of listening to a shock jock, and they're going to just listen to it. So you got to look up Rebecca's website, and we'll get to that before we wrap up the show as to how to get in touch with you. But you do have it together, Rebecca, and your answers are very on point. You're not even hesitating. It's very thorough, thought out from beginning to end. And the reason I'm telling you this, which you already know, is I want to know, and I have to, we're not going to run into Ted in our little Zoom here in our plead the fifth. So we're not going to let you plead the fifth here, which is usually in our in studio. We go through a plead the fifth section. But Rebecca, I want to know through your career a little bit. What are the mistakes? What is the one glaring mistake that you made that you simply didn't see coming? Because Rebecca, you have all the answers. You have the experience, the expertise with your clientele, but I want to know, and people need to know that you're human. And I want to know in your career, as you guided and consulted businesses and you realized, ooh, I just made that mistake. I didn't see that coming and I need to pivot. And what did I learn from it?
Yeah, let me first just put a parenthesis in there that a big reason perhaps why I sound like I know all the answers the big change came when I realized that the mistakes don't really matter that much. So it removed the fear of the mistake. And it's not so much you make a mistake, it's just to realize, oh, I should do that differently, and you change. And that's
Rebecca, I got to piggyback on that.
Sure.
My life is a bunch of mistakes. I think the mistakes matter a lot. I think they matter a lot more, actually. I'm not arguing with you here on camera, but you say it doesn't matter. I think they matter more than successes, because successes, that's just the way that you're behaving. When you make the mistakes, they matter so much. I like to put a spotlight on them to realize, and let's dissect this and do kind of a, as Ted talked about, a CSI or a post-mortem. Why did that happen? So we can all learn from those mistakes and how we would fix it. So I want to argue and push back that I actually think they matter more than the successes.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think those two sentiments contradict one another. Because absolutely, the mistake is when you learn, but that's also the benefit to it. I was growing up, I hated to be proven wrong until I finally realized I loved a healthy debate, and then I'd lose the debate and I'd get so frustrated until I realized every time I'm proven wrong, I've learned something new. That's brilliant. That's a great moment. And it's the same with mistakes. So we make a mistake, we fix it, we've learned something new. So absolutely, depending on how we're looking at the word importance, they are important in the sense that we examine them, we fix it, we've learned something new, we've improved. They're not important in terms of our mental condition, right? They should not be holding us back. The problem is when we have a fear of making mistakes, we stop doing the thing before we've even done it. So that was the big thing, was realizing that making the mistake was not fatal. And so I just removed that fear. And if I, say something incorrect here, if I slubber my words and make up a word, and that's not fatal, right? Whereas once upon a time, if that had happened here while talking to you, I would have been destroyed for 2 weeks and not left my room. So that's the importance of mistakes. And I say that merely to say, think about it that way. I mean, just don't be afraid of tripping and falling. It doesn't mean you're not capable of walking. In terms of mistakes that I have made, of course, I mean, many, and by learning, by doing, I'd say if there were common themes between them, one of them is perhaps not being assertive enough. I mean, I can certainly think of instances where I've thought, I think we should go in another direction, but somebody else sounds really, really decisive about what they're saying and not insisting and sort of pushing back in moments when I could have pushed back. Other moments where I've been dragged by the flow and by the sparkly thing, or the thing that sounded the nicest or most exciting, and realizing that actually a lot of good business happens in what is traditionally considered the boring areas. But as I said at the beginning, that's actually where a lot of the great ideas come from. But I ran a small business before I started my consultancy. I ran it with a business partner. And so there was a certain comfort there that the mistakes were shared. They were both of ours. But we made them, we sent out the wrong communications. We targeted the wrong audience. We made a promise that we realized we couldn't keep, or we tried to hide a problem that eventually became obvious. And so again, you make those and then you realize, well, that's not a good way to do it. Let's do it differently from now on. And actually, it's always been quite satisfying to get to that point. I think back to what you're saying is then you realize, oh, this is going to be so much better next time. Let's do it again.
Is it true that the only ships that sink are partnerships?
Possibly. I don't have the data on that actually, but I'm gonna have to look it up now. I can see how a single manned raft could go under too, but partnerships are a slightly different beast, and but they can be so valuable because you have built-in accountability. Biggest problem I see in partnerships is people assume that they're on the same page. They think they're reading their minds. You're not. You never are. Never make that assumption. You don't even realize you're making that assumption. I've seen this happen most often with family members and family businesses, spouses, siblings, etc., because there's so much unspoken communication that does happen naturally, not in business.
Sorry, guys, my audio was muted for a split second. That's wonderful. My apologies. So let me ask you a question, Rebecca. One of the greatest transformations, I do like to ask about the challenges, of course, but I also like to always end on a high note, like Costanza. So I'm dating myself. That's a Seinfeld reference, sorry. But you always end on a high note. But give me one of your greatest transformations, maybe a little bit of a challenge as you guided someone, but one of the things that you saw, someone took what you have taught them, you can start letting go of them riding the bike, as you're taking your 3-year-old to 5-year-old and you start holding the handlebars with them until you finally let go and you see them take off on their own. Have you had one of those experiences with your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me think. One recently, clients I've been working with for a while. There are three owners in a small business, about 25 employees, three partners, and the person in the role of the CEO completely overworked, plenty of really good ideas, never able to get to them because the other two roles were very well defined. And the CEO ended up being the catch-all. And so he was just doing everything basically. So very classic situation. We worked together over time, and a big part of their concern was developing their employees. And when we first started working together, the problem was their only thought of developing employees was to promote them. And they said, but we can't just keep promoting people every 6 months. There's a cap. And in particular, this one person, really great at what he does. If we promote him, he doesn't have the skills for the managerial job above what he does. He's just really good at what he does. So how do we recognize that? What we ended up doing was getting an operational plan in place and putting in a lot of those essentials that I mentioned, guiding principles, org chart. We trained their employees on writing their own job descriptions. And the outcome, that aha moment that you're talking about, was in a recent meeting where we were doing a quarterly business review, and we had two employees in particular that we were looking at for development. And the CEO came out with a specialization plan for one of those employees. So this employee that there's a concern of the promotion, we're going to promote this person out of their area of competence. And so instead, creating a plan to specialize this person, and they would eventually take over this whole part of the business. So they were effectively getting a promotion, but not hierarchical, not up into management, but they were going to, in that way, be able to increase their salary, increase their responsibility, and also increase their skill in this particular area. So here suddenly was a CEO who had gone from being so overworked that he never even wanted to open his calendar, let alone plan his day, to now building a 6 to 12 month specialization plan for an employee, something he never would have thought of prior to all this work we did.
So, Rebecca, there are a lot of people that watch and listen to the podcast. Some people may need some consulting on trying to figure out how to keep and build those loyal customers. Some people are looking to get happier employees. Probably most. Some people are thinking about this annual planning that they might have to do to try to scale their business. How do you work with clients? And just tell us a little bit about that.
I start usually with a set project based on what it is that has first brought them to me. So is it the annual plan? And an annual plan I will do in an intensive sort of half-day session. Is it for the happy employees? Then we're looking at getting those foundations in part, like guiding principles, org chart, figuring out what has to happen in the business. So we're taking exactly what they need, putting it in a plan. And those are usually $3,500 for that specific part of the business, specific deliverables, final report, and action points. And then from there, we go on to quarterly business reviews. The quarterly business reviews are about simply quarterly planning. What do you need to work on this quarter? How will we know that this has been successful? At the end of the quarter, we look at, did we get there? And if not, how does that adjust what we need to work on next quarter? And then that's how we work together on an ongoing basis.
I think it's exciting. I think a lot of small business owners need this kind of help because, you're going to make a lot of mistakes as a business owner. And sometimes it's like when to bring in a consultant, but I think getting those advisors around you earlier, the better. Mm-hmm. How can people find you if they want to get some consulting?
The first starting point would be my website. So rgbrizzi.com, rgbrizzi.com. On there, there's also a link to subscribe. I have a weekly email called Tuesday on Your Business. So every Tuesday, different business tip. And that's a way for people to A, have an idea of something to work on their business for half an hour every week. But B, it also gives a good introduction to the type of work that I do, because that, of course, is what I'm covering in those emails. So that's the best place. There's a contact form on LinkedIn, Rebecca Gebhardt-Brizzi. Very happy for people to connect. And you mentioned my book, thank you. That's available on Amazon as well, Phrases for Business Success.
Well, this is great stuff. Yeah, I was going to say, listen, go back if you hear the entire broadcast. You can always get it at shrimptankpodcast.com. But these kinds of things over time, a lot of business owners don't put all the pieces together to create a great business, right? Thinking about, and I know that you talk a lot about this, improving morale in companies. thinking about the happy employees, thinking about those loyal customers, the pillars that you talked about today. They're all the kind of things that help business owners scale their business quicker. And then if you want to sell it one day, it puts you in a position to be able to sell something that somebody can take over and continue to grow that brand for many years to come. So thank you so much for sharing some of your expertise and wisdom on the podcast today. And it's exciting stuff. Glad that you're here in Atlanta, and I hope a lot of people decide to engage you.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a very fun discussion.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp